The scene is pretty disturbing, and it's one that I'd completely forgotten about until I recently rewatched the film.
FlynnsArcade.
Hi, this is FlynnsArcade, and this is my deep dive into Splash, the 1984 film starring Daryl Hannah and Tom Hanks. 40 years on since Splash first hit the screens, I recently rewatched this much-loved Mermaid classic, and it's a lot weirder than I ever remember it being. Not bad weird, just weird. So let's take a look together. Let's go. The film starts with a pleasure boat trip to Cape Cod 20 years ago. It looks like a fun trip. The band's playing, the sun's shining, but a little kid is upskirting random women.
Freddie! Listen to your father.
The only good thing about that scene is the fact that the boy's mum and dad do reprimand him quite strongly for his behaviour. I mean, they don't do a particularly good job of reprimanding him, but they do reprimand him. But the action quickly switches to his brother, who jumps in the sea for no apparent reason. But underwater, he meets a little girl just before he's rescued. And during the chaos, we learn that the little girl has a tail, and that his brother's got an upskirting fixation. The scene is pretty disturbing, and it's one that I'd completely forgotten about until I recently rewatched the film. The upskirting scene is rather troublesome to say the least, but the only positive I can say about it is at least if the boy's parents try to address it in universe. However, I had some real fridge horror a few days after watching this scene. Mermaids are a later variation of the Greek myth of the sirens, who lured sailors to their deaths. Is there a dark reason for the boy jumping in the sea, or was he just driven to it by the despair of living with his awful family? Let's find out. The scene moves to the present day, and we learn that the boy has grown up to be a man called Alan, who is now running a produce market, and his brother Freddie shows up. He's pretty reckless, and guess what he does next?
I'm in Penthouse Magazine! They printed my letter! They printed my letter!
Oh, listen, I'm very, very happy.
I'm in the forum section.
And yeah, he was doing that. He was handing out a copy of a porno mag to everyone at work. Surely not, but this is what I mean about Touchstone being darker and edgier. This is definitely not a kid's film. Moving on, we meet the company receptionist. She's really useless.
Your father called. He wants you to call him back.
Mrs. Stimler, our father passed away about 5 years ago.
We learn later in the film that she'd actually been struck by lightning, but much later in the film we see her again, and she's doing this.
No, a boat hit me. Mrs. Stimler.
Yeah, you see it, she's wearing a bra over her shirt. I mean, she has been struck by lightning, but wouldn't it have been a good idea to send her home until she's recovered? But they don't. I mean, I think this is supposed to be funny, but I just found it a bit weird, and this is the type of thing that, you know, bothered me a bit upon rewatching the film. We then find out that Alan's girlfriend Victoria has moved out of their apartment because he's so emotionally unavailable. The action then moves to his co-worker's wedding. His brother Freddie is there in attendance, and yeah, you've guessed it.
My flash never works on this figure, so my mother-in-law gave it to me.
He's still an upskirter, and it continues to be disturbing. I don't know why they put this in the film, but here we go. The action then moves to the wedding reception. Alan is in a really bad way. You see, he's drunk, he's approaching couples he doesn't even know. He is not in a good way. It's all off the back of him breaking up with his girlfriend, but it's pretty sad to see, to be honest. His brother Freddie has fared a lot better. We've just seen him meet two women he's never met before, and they take a shine to him, and he's taken off on a trip with them to Rio. Unfortunately, Alan is not doing anywhere near as well. And this is what we're going to explore in the next scene.
Okay, Cape Cod, that's about 300 miles. You got the cash?
What is this?
I mean, that's a really long and a really expensive cab ride. Alan is in a terrible state psychologically, Am I the only person who thinks that he's considering self-deletion at this point? Because I thought he was considering it when he jumped in the sea at the start of the film, and I'm really starting to see it now. This film is pretty dark when you think about it. I mean, I'd forgotten all of this, but it does start on quite a downer. At Cape Cod, Alan finds himself wandering the beach aimlessly. Here he has a surprising encounter.
Hold it. You see this? You see that? It says this end up.
As you can see, there's a scientist there, like, loading equipment onto a van. This guy is going to be quite a big character in the film. He's very funny because he's played by Eugene Levy, so the scientist adds a much needed sense of positivity and absurdity to the film because it was getting quite dark. Come on, Alan, hurry up. You can literally see him just walking up the beach in his own good time. After speaking to the scientist, Alan manages to hire a tiny boat to go to the island, and he finds things going from bad to worse. Yep, Alan's marooned on the boat. The captain swum off because the engine packed in, and now he's stuck there. And we also know at this point that Alan can't swim. It can't get much worse, or can it? He then falls into the water, and he gets hit on the head and sinks. He also drops his wallet. I've seen a few theories kicking around on the internet about this, and there's a few that Alan has actually died at this point. There's another theory that he actually died at the start of the film and the whole film's a dying dream, and this could be another point where it's happening. I don't think that is what's happening, but it is quite grim, and especially when we think about the story of sirens and how they used to lure men to their watery graves. Is that what's going on here? Are we actually watching a horror film? I couldn't remember any of this part of the film before watching it recently. It's like a whole prequel that's added on to establish the mermaid's love interest at the behest of the studio. It's surprisingly hard-hitting and depressing, and it hints at a dark subtext on a lot of levels. If, like me, you've been following the recent controversy of the Snow White remake and the star of the film who's very down on the original, you'll know that there's a real controversy about judging old media by today's standards, and I really didn't want to do that with Splash. As luck would have it, it actually feels like a contemporary film. The romance at the centre of the film feels like very much a modern romance, in that the relationship moves really quickly. Director Ron Howard was keen on making sure that the mermaid character wasn't objectified in any way. He wanted her to be portrayed as very much having her own personality, and even went so far as to portray her as a noble person. The way Daryl Hannah actually plays the character makes her feel like an empowered woman, and she certainly pursues Alan, and rather than the other way around. I mean, they pursue each other throughout the film. So this take gives the film a real modern edge. I'm a big fan of this film, but there is a lot of strangeness in it. And I don't just mean the fact it's about a mythical creature travelling around New York City. Hopefully in this video we'll get to explore the strangeness with some depth. Splash was the brainchild of Hollywood's producer Brian Grazer, who came up with the story of the adventures of a mermaid learning to live on land and exploring New York City. Initially it wasn't really a love story, but Brian struggled to find a studio who would make the film. Eventually, the film found a home with Walt Disney Productions, who agreed to make the film, provided that the focus was changed to that of an ordinary man who met and fell in love with the mermaid. At the time, Disney only made family-friendly films which were suitable for young children, but as an urban love story, Splash was rather adult in tone. Disney had just formed a subdivision company called Touchstone Pictures with a view of producing more adult-orientated content, and Splash was the first movie they released. Splash feels very much like a darker and edgier Disney movie, and I think this adds to the charm and is part of the reason for why it's held up so well over the years. Alan finds himself washed up on the shore, apparently alive and well. And he isn't alone. Finally, we get a glimpse of the adult mermaid. about a sixth of the way through the film. She makes good with her legs and runs off the beach, and she swims back to retrieve Alan's wallet, only to encounter the scientist. Now there's a whole section of the mermaid swimming around, and she finds a shipwreck and she finds a map on it, which is a map of New York State, and she uses the map to find Alan. I find this bit quite interesting because it shows that she had some knowledge of language before the start of the film, so I just quite like that. I mean, she's kind of superhuman in a lot of ways. Well, she isn't human, but it's quite impressive. But then, now on with the story, and here is one of my favourite scenes in the whole film.
This ain't California. We don't go for this stuff here. Come on.
I just love the way that she shows up nude at the Statue of Liberty. I mean, a beautiful woman stepping out of the sea. She looks like a Greek myth. And the fact that she's in the mundane environment of the Statue of Liberty and she's surrounded by tourists and security guards, it's just absolutely stunning. And I'm really glad that this has happened, because this film was not going well up until this point. She promptly gets arrested and is taken ashore by the police. Because she has Alan's wallet, the police use it to track him down. They phone up his office and he rushes to the police station. He picks her up and she goes back to his apartment and they have sex. This should be a romantic scene, but it is slightly jarring. Because the film is pretty realistic in a lot of ways, I can't help wondering why they didn't take her to hospital, because perhaps she had a head injury which meant she couldn't speak, or why they didn't make any sort of serious effort into finding out who she actually is. Instead, they sort of decided to palm her off onto Alan. There really are some serious safeguarding issues here, and it preyed on my mind. However, as the Strokes sang, New York City cops ain't too smart, so we'll just allow it. Alan has cheered up considerably the next time we see him.
My, oh my, what a wonderful day. Hi.
You see, he's literally singing. Just special mention there to the fact that the mermaid's wearing a Statue of Liberty t-shirt. I just really like that. They must have given it in the gift shop. I just think that's a really nice touch. He then goes into work for a couple of hours. For reasons best known to himself, he leaves the mermaid in his apartment alone. I don't know why he didn't just bring her with him or call him sick, but for some reason he decides to leave her there. Could this be some sort of problem? Yes, of course it is. She's been on her own watching TV and she's got ideas in her head, and she hightails it off to a department store. Bloomingdale's is still there. I actually visited it a few years ago, but I've just looked it up and there's several of them in New York. I'm guessing there were several back in 1984 too, and this could have caused a problem. My guess is the cab driver from outside of Alan's apartment just simply took her to the nearest one. If anyone knows, please let me know in the comments if I'm wrong about this, because I've got a feeling I might be. Were there several Bloomingdales back in 1984? Or is that quite a new thing? Maybe I'm worried about this for absolutely no reason, and when she said Bloomingdale's, she only meant one place, because otherwise it felt like a bit of a problem with the film. A lot of the humour in the film comes from the way the mermaid interacts with ordinary New Yorkers. Here we'll see a particularly dark encounter with an otherwise very friendly and helpful shop assistant.
That outfit, it's to die from. And what happened? You saw Annie Hall 100 times?
I quite like that mention of Annie Hall. That was a really famous film just before this one was made, and it featured Diane Keaton wearing a man's suit throughout, and so that was just quite a nice little spot in the department store.
You want to try that on? Who knows, maybe it's you. It isn't me. I couldn't get one leg in there. My daughter, on the other hand, is lucky. She's anorexic.
And so there we have that dark and edgy touchstone humour right there. Meanwhile, Alan has returned home to learn that the mermaid has hightailed it. And we learn that the mermaid has spent the last few hours in the department store learning English from watching the TV. And this leads to this epic scene where Alan finally asks her what her name is.
My name is...
which makes me think that she's actually some sort of cetacean, or at least has hung out with them a lot. Now that he can understand her, Alan is asking the mermaid a lot of questions, and he's becoming increasingly frustrated with her answers. There's some realism here.
If I stay longer than that, I can't ever go back.
And here we'll see Alan's understanding of what the mermaid's situation is, and it makes complete sense.
Oh, I get what? Is it some sort of immigration problem or something?
You see, there's some real realism there. Like, Alan is frantically trying to find a logical explanation for the mermaid's presence, and he's coming up with some pretty good explanations. It's just that they all happen to be wrong, but that one made complete sense. But here we'll see the mermaid claiming a name that Alan can actually say.
See, names. Linda, Kim, where are we?
You see, I always thought that Alan had pulled the street name out of his arse, but it turns out that Madison was actually the mermaid's idea.
Madison. Elizabeth.
Madison.
Samantha.
Madison, I like Madison.
You see, I really like that. Moving back to what Ron Howard said at the start of the video, he really wanted the mermaid to have her own personality, and the fact that she actually chose her own name makes me feel that, you know, they really were trying with this, because I honestly misremembered it and I thought that Alan had actually named her. Funnily enough, Madison didn't used to be a common name in those days. I'm sure you know loads of Madisons, I do too. So let me know in the comments if you're a Madison or if you know a Madison. Especially let me know if you are or know a Madison who was born before 1984, because one of the reasons it's such a popular name is because of this film. But if I find any older Madisons, I'd be really interested to know, so please shout it out. Alan then asks Madison to go back to his apartment to stay with him, and she eagerly accepts. It looks like the relationship is going really well. However, we're about to watch the most frustrating scene in the entire movie, in my opinion. Madison takes the opportunity to get in the bath and grow back her tail. It's a nice and relaxing scene. I believe there was some talk amongst the filmmakers into how shooting this scene as a sort of body horror type scene in the same way as they did with American Werewolf in London, but thankfully they didn't. They decided for it to just grow a tail back and for it to be really like nice and chill and relaxing. And it's nice to see Madison having a nice chill time on her own. Bear in mind that she's in a strange city, she's staying with a man that she's only just met, she's only recently learned how to speak English. She really does need a bit of me time. But then this happens.
Can I come in?
No!
So let's play Family Fortunes, or Family Feuds if you're from a different part of the world to me. Let's think of a reason why a woman might not want a man who she's attracted to, who she's just met, to go into the bathroom with her.
Well, then let me in.
I'll be right there. I'm just changing.
Enough is enough, Madison. Come on, open the door. Something is wrong.
I'm going to start with touching up her roots. She is a blonde. Followed by shaving her legs.
Alan, could you bake me some pancakes?
Make you some... Madison. All right, Madison, this is getting scary. You either open up this door or I'm going to break it down.
Then I'm going to go for waxing a bikini line.
No, Alan, please.
All right, that's it.
Alan, no! No!
And finally, our top answer is changing a tampon. Let me know in the comments what you think. Those are the best ones I can come up with. I could have come up with some much worse ones, but you get the picture.
Hi.
Hi. Are you okay?
Yeah.
Alan really doesn't have any excuse for being a dickhead in this scene.
Well, why wouldn't you let me in?
I was shy.
You were shy?
At the start of the movie, we know that he was shacked up with a woman called Victoria.
After the car and the elevator and the bedroom and on top of the refrigerator, you were shy?
I was shy.
So I'm pretty sure he has a good idea as to what women can get up to in bathrooms. But it doesn't stop him from behaving like this, and he really goes down in my estimation after this scene. Let's see if he can turn his reputation around in the eyes of the public. I mean, whilst he behaves like a total dick in this scene, could it be that he actually is reasonable? It's just that his suspicions, and I'm not surprised that he's got them, are starting to get the better of him. Let's find out. The action then cuts to the scientist who's on his boat, and guess who's on the front of the newspaper? It's Madison, after a stunt at the Empire State Building. I mean, that newspaper doesn't look particularly reputable, but it is national. Madison's a pretty big deal at this point. Madison is basically the 1984 equivalent of the girl. This is major. Surely a modelling contract or an advertising deal are just around the corner. Unfortunately, this doesn't happen. I mean, this film is pretty cartoonish in tone, but in a lot of ways it's very realistic, and I can't help but feel that they missed a trick with this. I mean, Madison is a major celebrity, so why didn't he run with that? But from all accounts, that one of the reasons why Ron Howard was able to make the film was because he promised the studio that he could make it within a really short space of time. So I actually think that's part of the reason why there's so many plot threads that never really get elaborated on. But yeah, it's still pretty great, but I just get really disappointed when I think of what could have been. But fame always comes with problems. The scientist is now on a mission. He isn't happy. Madison now has an antagonist. In this part of the film, we see Madison and Alan spend some time together. It's quite quiet and it's quite moving, and it demonstrates the way their relationship moves from a passionate fling into something more steady and long term. But as their relationship deepens, Alan is starting to have questions, and in many ways, his questions mirror those of the viewer. Alan goes to play squash with his brother Freddie, the upskirter. He comes up with a really logical explanation as to what's happened with Madison, that she's a migrant who jumped ship and swam ashore, and that she could always speak English. It's just the shock of jumping off the boat and coming on shore just made her lose her memory. That makes complete sense. And he also goes on to give Alan this really helpful advice.
I'm extremely liberal. I'm a freewheeling dude. You know what your problem is? You're in love with this girl and you're trying to convince yourself you're not.
Yeah, I mean, whilst Alan has every right to have some serious misgivings, I mean, Madison has a very sketchy backstory. I think Freddie actually has a proper point there, and I think, fair play to him for raising it. Are we starting to see a redemption arc for this terrible character? In this sweet scene, we realise just how Madison and Alan feel about each other.
For the statue.
Why?
Because I love you.
Oh, Madison.
I mean, moving back to the start of the film, we know that Alan's actually got emotional problems and his old girlfriend's actually dumped him because of it. So let's see what he says in response to Madison's declaration of love.
I love it. And I love you.
So thankful for that. But don't get too comfortable, because meanwhile the scientist is pleading his case to the Natural History Museum.
You used to show me charts on the walls of where sailors had claimed they saw mermaids.
I mean, he's just been rollocked for being a crank, but listen further.
I'm going to prove to you and to everyone else that that girl is a mermaid.
There's been some major cryptozoology talk going on in this museum.
You're gonna get her wet so everybody sees she has fins?
You see, it's not good. He then stalks Madison around the city. He splashes random women with water, and he ends up getting a serious kick in. It's quite satisfying. Meanwhile, Madison and Alan have gone to the Rockefeller Center to do some ice skating, and here Alan proposes to Madison.
Madison, would you marry me?
Unfortunately, she refuses.
No.
What? No, just no?
Alan has some really realistic ideas as to why Madison might say no to his proposal. Let's have a listen.
What, you're already married? Well, you're dying, you were once a man, whatever it is, I don't care, you can tell me.
Those are really good ideas. I mean, if I was Alan, I'd go straight to organised crime or something to do with MK Ultra, but instead he comes up with some pretty good ideas as to why she won't marry him. Maybe he's a lot less paranoid than I am. He then starts being a total dick on the skating rink. He spots an elderly couple who are dancing happily, and this upsets him even further. He starts being really nasty, I mean quite understandably, but this causes Madison to make good with her legs and hightail it away from the ice rink. And this leads to one of my favourite scenes of the whole movie.
Madison! Madison! Hey, those skates are ready. Look, just give me 1 second, okay? Madison!
Yeah, I just really like it, the way that he's trying to run off wearing ice skates. And what the guy in the kiosk says, actually, I just love this bit.
Madison! Please, I'm sorry! Let her go. Show some dignity, for Christ's sake. Madison!
Yeah, show some dignity, for Christ's sake. I just love that bit. However, after all that hilarity, the film takes a really dark turn and we're on to the really sad part of the movie now. Madison runs away and hides under the underpass, and Alan spends all night running around the city frantically looking for her. To make matters even worse, it starts to rain. It's really sad, and later we see Madison stood by the side of the river, seriously considering jumping in. Obviously she'd just swim away and she'd be fine, but it really reminds me of the earlier scenes where I thought Alan was considering self-deletion. It's a really sad part of the film. But thankfully, the next time we see her, she goes to see Alan at his workplace, and guess what? She says yes to his proposal. Thank fuck for that. But all Madison's horrible chickens are coming home to roost. The scientist who was stalking the couple is currently posing as a housekeeper in Alan's apartment building. He's getting closer, but then Alan whisks Madison off for a dinner with the president. There's a lot of people outside the event protesting. I can't help feeling that those protesters should be important in some way. Unfortunately they aren't, but I thought that they were going to be, but they're not. But they should be, but they're not. I think this is one of those things about Ron Howard making the film really quickly. I think that there's a lot of like kind of loose ends that you think were going somewhere and they didn't. However, it's all going pretty well at the presidential dinner, but not for long. Look who's managed to sneak into the venue.
Do you have a broken arm?
No. No, it's fractured 16 places.
I mean, this is quite funny, but...
Why are you here?
Union sent me.
I mean, what sort of an operation are they running exactly? I mean, the president's literally there and it looks like they'll let anyone into that hotel. It's very shoddy. I think that's that dark touchstone humour kicking in once again. But thankfully, in the next scene, security appear to have clocked him.
Alert, alert. Table 5. Set a busboy with a suspicious hump. He's reaching us. Get him now.
I mean, I'm pretty shocked he managed to get in the first place, but at least the security officers are actually finally trying to do something. But yeah, it is quite troublesome, this bit. But the scientist is a bit of an idiot, and it looks like he's picked the worst possible time or place to stalk the couple. But talking about the worst possible time and place, as we know, Madison has been hiding a secret from Alan throughout the film. And at this precise moment, she decides it's time to tell him her dark secret. And she could not have picked a worse moment. They go outside the hotel, and Madison gets hosed down by the scientist. I mean, that scene's pretty disturbing and dramatic, and I feel that the flashing lights of the camera bulbs and the sound of them add to the general sense of drama. I mean, it's pretty difficult to watch. However, the thing we're going to see next caused me to shout at the TV when I saw it. Like, look, Madison is crying out for Alan, and guess what he's doing? He's just stood there like an absolute chump. I mean, call me old-fashioned, but that's literally his fiancée being manhandled out of his life. I mean, after watching the film, I calmed down a few days later and I started to think, well, maybe he was just having a freeze response in the stress of the situation. I just really wish he'd had a fight response because he really needed to fight at that point and he just didn't. And I'm pretty angry with old Alan right now. The next time we see Alan and Madison, it's quite sad. They're in a tank being assessed by scientists and Alan gives Madison the cold shoulder. Shortly after this, he's bundled into a car and taken away and dumped on the street. Kind of serves him right. When he gets home, he finds himself being doorstepped by a journalist.
No! Leave him alone! Leave him alone!
This adds to the sense of realism in the film. But I still can't help but wonder why no one tracked Madison down after her stunt at the Statue of Liberty. I know the world has changed a lot since 1984, but I'm pretty sure that bare minimum, after that stunt and the publicity it caused, she could have totally got a job modelling for Playboy or for Page 3. I mean, she literally looks like a Hollywood film star. You're not telling me that tabloid journalists weren't going to track her down after that. This film's pretty realistic in a lot of ways, but like I say, there's some bits that I really felt that they dropped the ball with, and this is really one of them. I mean, but then it would have been quite a different film. It would have been if it had gone the way that I thought it was going to. Thankfully, Alan's brother shows up to rescue him from the journalist, thus continuing his redemption arc. He then delivers this classic line.
All my life, I've been waiting for someone, and when I find her, she's a fish. Nobody said love's perfect.
Amazingly, this character managed to win me around, sort of. He's a total degenerate, but his libertine ways are exactly what Alan needs right now. He has a zero given attitude, and that is the right attitude to help Alan deal with the bizarre situation he's found himself in. He then gives him a right telling off, which manages to knock some sense into him. And this is exactly at the right moment because poor Madison is not in a good way. I mean, she looks a mess. I mean, all her skin's like peeling off a tail. It's really sad to see.
She look a little pale.
Even the scientist looks guilty, and he should do. He should be very ashamed of himself. I found myself hoping that the protesters that we saw earlier were going to show up and help out in some way. I mean, surely this is a human rights abuse, and I'd be pretty surprised if there isn't like a lawyer who wants to get involved in the whole of New York City. But yet again, it's one of those things I expected and wasn't delivered, unfortunately. But there we go, I just felt I need to raise this. I mean, the film's pretty realistic in a lot of ways, and so when I see bits that could be realistic and weren't, I don't like it, but, you know, allow it, basically. I mean, I thought the protesters were being set up to help Madison because I knew she was going to get captured by the scientists, but they didn't seem to be being set up for anything. Like, they seem to be just general protesters. So if anyone has any ideas as to what they're actually protesting, please let me know in the comments. I mean, the funnier the better, but if you have any sensible ideas, please let me know. I mean, was there anything particularly going off in New York in 1984 that I don't know about? Let me know. Save the whale. But they don't show up, and it's a shame because at this point Alan has been no help whatsoever. But it turns out he actually is. He's had a massive change of heart, probably off the back of the telling off his brother gave him. But then he teams up with the scientist, and both him and the scientist and his upskirting brother decide to launch an escape. And the upskirting brother actually has a valuable skill. The way they break into the Natural History Museum is by pretending to be Swedish scientists. Unfortunately, the security guard there can speak Swedish, and he asks them a question in Swedish. That's what the nonce brother says.
Jag har en turf and en Tums penis.
Yeah, it looks like bullshit. And he goes on to say that the reason why he can say that phrase in Swedish is because he's watched so many erotic movies in that language, some of it sunk in. So finally, his libertine ways have paid off. I just really wish that the film had focused on him watching pornographic movies and going on trips to Rio with women he's just met and staying out drinking late and stuff like that. He would have been a lovable rogue if it had stayed with that. Instead they included, like, why did they put all the upskirting in? It was never cool at any point ever, and so they just made him into a way bit worse degenerate than he needed to. And especially at this point I actually like the character. I just really wish they'd not put it in. And finally we see the happy couple reunited and they kiss. It's such a nice moment, but special mention to the brother there, because his expression cracks me up here. He looks like a McPoyle brother when he see, you know, It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, when he sees his brother snogging his sister. It's really creepy and really funny, and it adds a really nice creepy touch to the film. And so the next 15 minutes of the film are a car chase throughout the city. It's pretty exciting, but I'm just going to skip to the end.
You mean that was you? That was you!
And that was Madison telling Alan that she was the little girl he met when he fell in the sea in Cape Cod all those years ago. And then they swim off into the sunset. The end. Right, I really enjoyed that film. Some of it was a bit iffy, and I think you know which bits I'm talking about, but mostly I thought it was really, really good. I think it's really stood the test of time. I think it's a really nice film. It's pretty chaotic, and I think that because of the whole thing about having to shop the movie around various studios and and the fact that Ron Howard had to make the film like really quickly, it adds a really chaotic edge to the film, which adds to its magic. I also really liked the fact that it was so edgy, but yet it felt like a sort of Disney kids film, but then there was like loads of like sex stuff in it and drinking and, you know, crude jokes and stuff. I just think it's a magic film, and I think that because it's such a mishmash in the fact it's about a mermaid, which is ultimately a creature that's like half human and half fish, the whole thing feels like it's you know, really like strange hybrid creature, and I really like it. It was the first film that Touchstone made, and I think that its legacy has really impacted quite heavily on Touchstone and also on cinema generally. I'm sure there were similar films to Splash before this one came out, but this one is a real trope codifier. It's really magic, and I really enjoyed it, even if I did make fun of it in places, but I do love that film. I mean, I think that Daryl Hannah and Tom Hanks really brought a lot of chemistry to the role, and I can't help but respect Brian Grazer's vision in ensuring that this film got made, because I know it was quite difficult, but you know, he stuck with it, and here we are watching it 40 years later, and thank goodness that we are. This was quite an interesting film for me to make a video on. Anyone who's followed me for a while knows that I usually make films about animation, and I usually make films specifically about Adult Swim programs, so this was quite a departure, but it kind of felt like something that I wanted to do, and it really feels like it's kind of in character for the channel. But yeah, let me know what you think. If you're not sure what to write, please could you just drop me a dolphin emoji or a wave emoji, or let me know what your favourite fish is, because apparently comments really help the algorithm. And that's all from me. Unless something comes up in the meantime, I'll see you next Sunday.